Lena Rivera balanced on the top rung of a rattling aluminum ladder, the dawn light slanting through tall studio windows and igniting her newest mural in a blaze of crimson and cobalt. Every stroke felt like defiance. Against convention, against expectation, against the gnawing fear that art school would tame her into safety. She flicked her wrist, sent magenta shooting out in a comet sweep, and let the wet paint drip like wildfire down the primed brick. Somewhere below, the double doors creaked and the familiar timbre of Eve's voice rose. Soft, deliberate, always grounding. "Careful up there, rebel," Eve called, arms folded as she surveyed the chaos of color. Her hazel eyes shimmered with admiration and a hint of worry. Eve was dressed in palest sage overalls already smudged with graphite dust, hair pinned back in a neat twist, as though even the smallest stray curl might betray her precision. Lena grinned down at her girlfriend. "Rules are for people afraid to fall." Eve sighed, the affectionate kind that was half surrender and half silent plea for caution. "Breakfast burritos are getting cold. If I have to rescue you again, we'll be late for Whitmore's lecture." The ladder groaned as Lena descended. She landed, paint-flecked sneakers squeaking on concrete, and pecked Eve's cheek. 10 more minutes and we'll sprint." 5, Eve bargained, but her frown melted under Lena's mischievous smile. They had navigated 3 years of art school hand in hand, Eve's delicate realism counterbalancing Lena's explosive abstractions, yet the routine comfort never dulled the spark between them. Or so Eve believed, until the moment Dr. Claire Whitmore stepped into their world. Claire hurried across campus, coat unbuttoned, hair swept into a loose chignon that had already begun to escape in strands the color of dark honey. Behind her stylish glasses, her ocean gray eyes scanned the syllabus notes clutched in one hand and the text message vibrating insistently in the other. "Dinner with the firm's partners tonight. Don't forget the donation gala Saturday. Love you, Mark." Mark, her attentive, ambitious husband. 6 years of marriage that felt increasingly like curating an exhibit of someone else's art. Perfect lighting, polished plaques, but no pulse. She silenced the phone and quickened her stride. Today, she would open her new elective, Symbolism and Modern Identity. These first-year seniors needed passion, not autopilot. Passion she once bled into research papers and gallery critiques before life settled into muted tones. At the lecture hall door, she paused, inhaled, and stepped inside. Rows of students chatted, balancing coffee cups and sketchbooks. Claire's gaze traveled instinctively toward the back, where a woman with a shock of indigo-streaked black hair leaned against the wall. Even slouched, she radiated kinetic energy, as though she might sprint through the room and splatter paint across every blank space if dared. Lena met the lecturer's eyes, unflinching. In that electric second, a silent recognition passed between them. Curiosity, challenge, and something hot and swift Claire hadn't felt since grad school. She blinked, looked away, and began class. "Art has never belonged to safe voices," Claire said, voice ringing clear. "It belongs to those willing to risk fracture for truth." She paced, weaving stories of Egon Schiella's scandalous self-portraits and Zanil Moholy's fearless photographic activism. Her words found eager listeners, yet none more rapt than the woman in the back row who scribbled fiercely in neon ink. Eve sat 2 seats over, catching the way Lena's attention narrowed to a single point, Claire's moving silhouette. Eve's stomach tightened as if braced for a storm only she could forecast. Hours later, the campus quad buzzed with spring optimism. Lena and Eve settled on stone steps outside the library, unwrapping belated breakfast burritos. "Okay, she's intense," Lena said between bites. "Did you see how she dissected Schiella's seated male nude? No one ever ties that piece to queer identity like that." Chewed slowly. "Claire Whitmore is brilliant, sure. But you looked like you wanted to crawl into her lecture notes." Lena laughed, tossing her head. "I'm allowed to admire a sharp mind. Admire or orbit." The words slipped out before Eve could soften them. She regretted the edge in her voice but not the truth inside it. Lena reached for Eve's hand, paint-stained fingers curling around Eve's clean ones. "Hey, you're my gravity, remember?" Eve nodded, though the answer didn't quiet the insecurity blooming in her chest. That evening, Claire walked into her Beacon Hill townhouse and found Mark in the living room, blueprint tubes strewn across the sofa. He greeted her with a kiss on the forehead, pointed to elevation drawings, and launched into talk of a municipal contract. Claire smiled, commented, poured 2 glasses of Italian red. Yet as Mark detailed load-bearing columns, her mind drifted to indigo hair and a mural she had glimpsed on the student sculpture garden wall. Lena's unmistakable style. Colors vibrated behind her eyes long after Mark's words dissolved. Later, in the hush of their bedroom, Claire lay awake beside her sleeping husband. Moonlight slivered through the curtains, tracing lines across the ceiling like pale brushstrokes. She replayed the morning's moment, the jolt when Lena's gaze locked with hers. It unsettled and intrigued her, stirring something perilously close to longing. She rose, padded to her study, and opened her laptop. The departmental website offered student portfolios. Within minutes she located Lena Rivera's page. Piece after piece erupted on the screen, riots of pigment, scored with scraped textures and furious movement. Each caption read like manifesto: "Dreams are barbed wire, bodies in rebellion, unapologetic pulse." Claire felt her pulse mirror that title. Rapid, insistent. She bookmarked the page, closed the laptop, and pressed cool fingers to warm cheeks. She was a married professor, tenured and trusted. Whatever fascination tugged at her, she would tuck it away where forbidden impulses go to die. Yet as she slipped back into bed, her heart pounded louder than Mark's soft breathing, and sleep refused to come. 2 days later, Claire announced an optional evening walk-through critique at the campus's old foundry warehouse where senior murals were temporarily displayed before the spring showcase. She expected a handful of dedicated students. When she arrived, Lena was already there, lone figure among cavernous shadows, arms folded as she studied her colossal mural under harsh industrial lights. Claire's heels clicked across paint-stained cement. "You never rest, Ms. Rivera." Lena smirked. "Rest is overrated. Besides, art talks louder when the building's empty." They stood side by side, staring at the searing image. A silhouette of a woman ripping threads from her own chest, threads morphing into birds mid-flight. "It's breathtaking," Claire murmured. "A violent emancipation." "A necessary one," Lena replied. "Sometimes you have to tear yourself open to breathe." The vulnerability in her words startled Claire. For a moment she forgot the power imbalance, forgot Mark, forgot every cautionary tale about professors and students. She saw only a soul carved wide and honest. Footsteps echoed, the arrival of other classmates, and the spell fractured. Claire stepped back, professionalism restored. Yet as she conducted critiquing rounds, she remained keenly aware of Lena's orbit, the heat of her presence flickering like a candle too close to paper. Outside, Eve lingered near the warehouse entrance, watching silhouettes move inside. She had declined the critique, needing to finish a commissioned portrait, yet something compelled her here. Through grimy glass panes she spotted Lena and Claire laughing softly over a paint-splattered ladder. An ache gripped her like a vice. Rationally, she trusted Lena. Emotionally, she sensed a fault line widening under their feet. The street lamps hummed, insects swarming the light. Eve turned away, heart heavy, and whispered into the night, "Please don't let us crack." 3 weeks before the spring showcase, whispers spread across Cooperbridge's halls. Dr. Whitmore had selected Lena Rivera for a prestigious joint exhibition pairing student artists with faculty research. For Lena, it was validation. For Claire, a chance to dive deeper into the younger artist's vision. For Eve, confirmation of her dread. Eve congratulated Lena with an embrace that felt too tight, too brief. Lena kissed her hair, promised this was good for both of them, promised nothing would change. But in the quiet after Lena left for a late studio session, Eve stared at her own unfinished canvas and wondered if promises could muffle the roar of destiny. Night settled over Boston, and in 3 separate corners of the city, an attic studio drenched in color, a meticulous realist workspace smell of turpentine, and a Beacon Hill study lined with art history tomes. 3 women painted, wrestled, and dreamed, unaware that each brushstroke was etching them closer to collision. The first faint cracks in the veneer of safe lives had appeared, and nothing, ethics, vows, or years of devotion, could erase the lines once they were drawn. Rain sheeted over Boston in early April, turning the cobblestones outside Cooperbridge's warehouse into slick mirrors that swallowed the city lights. Inside, heaters rattled and smell of damp canvas mingled with turpentine as Lena and Dr. Claire Whitmore huddled beneath the halo of a single clamp lamp. Tonight was their 3rd late-night session for the joint exhibition, a hush hour when the campus emptied and flaws bared themselves without witnesses. Lena worked fast, attacking a 6-foot panel with palette knife swaths of violet and bruise black. Claire hovered nearby, notebook in hand, murmuring fragments of art theory that brushed Lena's skin like feathered sparks. Liminal tension, emancipated gaze. The body as battleground. Each phrase sent a jolt through Lena's ribs, a recognition deeper than praise. Paint spattered her hoodie, her cheek, the corner of Claire's linen blouse where she leaned too close. "What if you tilt the horizon?" Claire suggested, fingertips grazing the wet edge to illustrate an angle. Their eyes met, breath mingled, time lurched. For one pulsing heartbeat, the warehouse felt smaller than a confession booth. Then Lena swallowed, nodded once, and dragged the knife, slicing the scene into an off-kilter precipice that made the entire composition real. "Brilliant," Claire whispered, throat tight. She stepped back, dizzy with the heady mix of turpentine and forbidden electricity. Her phone buzzed. Mark, a reminder about Sunday's charity brunch. She silenced it, thumb lingering. Outside obligations felt papier-thin compared to the vividness before her. Across town, Eve cleaned graphite dust from her fingernails in the tiny bathroom of the off-campus apartment she and Lena shared. Half-finished portrait commissions leaned against every wall, but her gaze kept skimming to the clock. 11:30. Again. She told herself creative momentum was wild. Lena had always kept erratic hours, but now each missed curfew felt like another stitch loosening. She returned to the bedroom, opened her sketchbook, and forced lines onto paper. Claire's profile, Lena's gaze, the negative space between them shaped like a blade. Tears blurred the graphite. She flipped the page, started over, determined to anchor herself in craft instead of fear. The next afternoon, Claire's symbolism class buzzed with post-rain energy. She announced a surprise off-site lecture at the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. "We'll analyze intimacy in layered curation," she said, scanning the room. Lena flashed a grin. Eve kept her face neutral, though her stomach tightened. They met on the museum steps at dusk. The empty galleries glowed gold around them, secrets echoing off marble. Claire guided them past Titian and Sargent, stopping before an obscure Whistler nocturne. "Notice how the unseen becomes the subject," she said softly. Lena's shoulder brushed hers. Static jumped across layers of fabric. Eve stood behind them, arms folded, catching every subtle spark. When the group dispersed to sketch, Eve approached Claire. "Professor, could I ask about next week's reading?" Polite veneer, steady voice. Claire answered, but sensed the undercurrent, a boundary being drawn by someone determined not to lose ground. Lena found them mid-conversation, eyebrows raised. "Eve, you hate Whistler." Eve's smile was cool. "Tonight I like context." Claire felt caught between rival tides and excused herself, heart hammering. Days folded into a restless rhythm. Class critiques, stolen glances, late-night warehouse sessions. One evening Claire arrived to find Lena sitting cross-legged on the concrete. Smear of red paint across her jaw, tears glinting. "What happened?" Claire knelt. "I scraped the whole left panel. It felt dishonest." Lena's voice cracked, equal parts rage and vulnerability. Claire reached out, thumb wiping a tear track, but her hand lingered, cupping Lena's face, paint and skin and trembling breath. "Nothing about you is dishonest," she said. Her wedding ring pressed cold against Lena's cheek. Silence swelled, a precipice of decision. Then footsteps clattered in the corridor. They jolted apart as Eve entered, clutching a container of soup. She took in the scene. The closeness, Claire's hand half-raised Lena's flushed cheeks, and something inside her went glass-quiet. "I thought you'd be hungry," Eve said, voice thin. She set the soup beside Lena's rags, nodded politely at Claire, and walked out before either could form words. The door slammed, echoing like a gavel. That night Lena returned home to find Eve packing reference photos into a folio. An argument ignited. Late hours, shifting priorities, invisible lines crossed. Lena insisted nothing physical had happened. "You know me, Evie, you know my heart." But Eve countered that hearts stray long before hands do. Anger dissolved into tears, then into restless silence as Lena slept on the couch, studio light still staining her clothes. Meanwhile, Claire sat in her Beacon Hill study staring at her wedding portrait. Two smiling professionals beneath summer oaks. Mark was at a firm retreat upstate, texting logistical love. She closed the photo album, poured bourbon she barely tasted, and opened Lena's portfolio again. Pulse thrumming, she sent a late message. "Your panel isn't ruined. It's becoming. See you tomorrow at 7. 3 dots appeared, vanished, reappeared. "I'll be there," Lena replied. Claire exhaled, a sound like surrender. The campus hummed as spring showcase approached. Posters announced unveiled identities. Rivera plus Whitmore alongside faculty-student pairings. Rumor mills spun faster. Whispers of favoritism, speculation about after-hours mentorship. Eve overheard fragments in hallways. Intense chemistry. Boundary pushing. Each word carving deeper grooves of hurt. Eve channeled pain into her own showcase piece. A life-size realist diptych of two women reaching for each other across an invisible barrier. The brushwork was flawless, but beneath every layer was grief. Professors praised her technical mastery. Classmates called it haunting. Lena admired it one morning, eyes glossy. "It's us," she said quietly. Eve didn't answer. A week before opening night, Claire and Lena stood back-to-back in the warehouse, murals drying under fans. Claire's phone rang, Mark again. She silenced it. Turning, she found Lena inches away, eyes reflecting halogen glare and unspoken hunger. "Claire," Lena breathed, first name tasting illicit. "I can't keep painting around the thing we're pretending isn't there." Claire's resolve wavered like canvas in storm wind. Her marriage, her tenure, the ethical cliff, everything flickered. She lifted a hand to Lena's cheek. A deliberate, irreversible stroke. The warehouse door banged open. Eve burst in, cheeks wet from rain and tears, clutching a folded campus newspaper featuring the exhibition headline. She froze at the tableau. Professor and student, intimacy undeniable. For 3 heartbeats nobody moved. Then Eve whispered, "I knew," voice shattered. She dropped the paper, turned, and ran into the storm outside. Lena called after her, pain cracking through her chest, but guilt pinned her feet. Claire's hand fell away, leaving a print of blue pigment on Lena's skin. Outside, lightning split the sky over Boston, thunder rolling through streets and hearts alike. Inside, the murals loomed, visions of emancipation, rebellion, and rupture, mirroring the lives of their creators. Lines had been crossed, words unsaid could never be unsaid, and the spring showcase now promised revelation far beyond artistic intent. The night stretched long, storms within and without, carrying all 3 women irrevocably toward the moment when art, love, and consequence would collide in the full glare of gallery lights. Morning fog clung to the Charles River like a secret, and in Cooperbridge's cavernous warehouse the murals for unveiled identities loomed half-lit, smelling of wet paint and unresolved desire. Lena arrived first, skin still sticky from sleep and guilt. Eve's absence at their apartment had left the rooms echoing. She'd woken alone on the couch, her phone blank, the storm's memory drumming in her ears. Now every brushstroke on her unfinished panel felt brittle, as if one wrong motion might shatter the art and the life she'd built with Eve. Claire stepped through the wide loading doors soon after, umbrella dripping, eyes shadowed by a night of turmoil. She stopped a dozen feet away, tension humming between them like live wire. They had not spoken since Eve fled. Words seemed both insufficient and too dangerous. Is Eve okay? Claire asked at last, voice low. I don't know, Lena admitted. She left before dawn. She isn't answering my texts. Shame thickened her throat. I need to find her. Claire nodded, a flicker of pain crossing her features. Of course. Go. Yet her hand twitched, as though wanting to reach Lena and pull her back. She tucked it into her coat pocket instead. I'll finish the hanging logistics. Lena hesitated, the mural's vast unfinished sky bleeding down the panel as if begging her to stay. But the echo of Eve's footsteps in rain pushed her toward the door. Across campus, Eve sat alone in a tiny corner booth at Café Marigold, a haunt she and Lena once claimed as their own. Now she stirred a mug of cooling coffee, watching cream swirl into ghostly shapes. She had spent the night in a classmate's spare room, replaying the warehouse tableau. Claire's ringed hand cupping Lena's cheek, paint the color of longing smeared between them. Her phone buzzed again. Lena. Eve shoved its screen down, lungs tightening. She opened her sketchbook instead, forcing charcoal across the page. But every line bent back to the same image. 3 figures bound together, threads fraying toward break. A voice cut through the cafe hum. Eve. Professor Malik, chair of the Fine Arts Department, stood at the counter. He greeted her warmly, but his eyes narrowed with concern. You all right? You look just tired, Eve lied, snapping the sketchbook shut. Malik glanced at the time. If you need anything. The board's making final rounds today. Big week. He offered a reassuring smile and left, leaving Eve's pulse galloping. The board. The exhibition committee. Faculty gossip. Did they know? Would they care that heartbreak, not ambition, fueled her masterpiece? She paid quickly and stepped outside into mist that turned her breath to vapor. Cooperbridge banners flapped overhead, announcing spring showcase. This Friday. Only 5 days. Time marched on uncaring. At noon, Lena finally found Eve in their shared apartment, packing brushes and journals into a canvas tote. The air felt bruised. Eve, please. Lena closed the door behind her, dread pooling in her gut. Nothing happened. I froze. Sorry. I should have pushed her away. Eve's shoulders rose and fell. You didn't need to push her away, she whispered without turning. You needed not to want it. Lena stepped forward. I love you. I'm just confused. Everything's spinning and I can't. Eve faced her then, eyes rimmed red. Do you know how it feels to watch the person who's supposed to be my anchor drift toward someone else? I'm drowning, Lena. I'm drowning too, Lena said. In fear. In art. In wanting more than one truth. Tears blurred her vision. Help me swim back. Eve's anger cracked, revealing raw sorrow. She brushed a strand of hair behind Lena's ear. Paint still dried along Lena's jawline. I hate that I still want to hold you, she whispered. But I need space, or I'll shatter. Lena nodded, chest aching. I'll stay at the dorm studio. Finish the panel. Give you room. She lifted Eve's hand, kissed the knuckles. It tasted of salt and graphite. Please come to critique tomorrow. We can talk after. Eve closed her eyes, then pulled free, fists trembling. We'll see, she said, voice paper thin. That night Claire sat in the faculty lounge with Professor Malik and Dean Reynolds as they finalized showcase logistics. Her nerves scraped raw. Malik pointed to the program. Unveiled identities. Rivera plus Whitmore, stellar buzz. Just keep things tidy. He tapped the table twice, meaning clear. Gossip had reached the department's upper echelons. Claire kept her composure, but guilt coiled tighter. Leaving the meeting, she found Mark waiting in her office doorway, travel bag slung over one suited shoulder. Surprise. Retreat wrapped early. He kissed her cheek. Thought we could grab late dinner. Her smile felt stiff. I have to check the warehouse first. Last-minute installation issues. Mark glanced at his watch but nodded. I'll come along, see your prodigy's work. Alarm ricocheted through her chest. It's chaotic, industrial, hardly a gallery. She forced a laugh. Let's meet after. But Mark insisted. So 15 minutes later Claire unlocked the warehouse, fluorescent fixtures flickering on to reveal Lena's mural, now soaring nearly complete, while Claire's own research panels lined the opposite wall in hushed symphony. Mark whistled. Impressive scale. Lena emerged from behind a scaffold, startled to find the visitors. Paint stained her forearms. Exhaustion ringed her eyes. Claire's heart jumped at the sight, and at the way Mark's assessing gaze lingered on Lena, then slid to Claire. "You must be Ms. Rivera," he said politely, extending a hand. "My wife talks about your talent." "Lena," she corrected, shaking his hand. Heat flushed her face. "I didn't know anyone else was coming." "Last minute," Claire said. She willed her cheeks to cool. Mark studied the massive canvas, the fractured horizon, the birds erupting from a stitched open chest. "Painful image," he remarked. "Is that autobiographical?" Lena's throat bobbed. "It's about liberation." Mark raised an eyebrow but said nothing further. He wandered to Claire's panels, reading labels. Claire joined him, tension buzzing. At one point he asked quietly, "Boundary between mentorship and collaboration. Comfortable with that?" Claire's breath snagged. "It's strictly professional." Mark nodded slowly, yet skepticism shadowed his eyes. He thanked Lena for the tour and ushered Claire out. As they walked to his car, neither spoke. Rain began again, soft but relentless. The next morning Dean Reynolds sent Claire an email titled, "Student Faculty Conduct Inquiry." It requested a private meeting after showcase, citing unverified concerns. Claire's hands shook as she closed her laptop. One whisper had reached administration already. Critique day arrived, studio buzzing. Eve entered late, clutching a portfolio, eyes shadowed. Lena's spirit leapt at her presence. Claire began the session, voice steady, but inside she quaked. They reviewed works until only Lena's mural remained. She unveiled it. The off-kilter horizon, birds soaring from a crimson rupture, and newly added overnight, two silhouettes entwined at the center, barely discernible under veils of translucent white. Gasps rippled through the class. Claire stepped forward. "Talk us through the final layer." Lena swallowed. "The silhouettes represent love that refuses to fit prescribed shapes. They're obscured because society insists desire stay hidden." She glanced at Eve, finding her gaze unreadable. "But they're still there, unerasable." Students murmured admiration. Someone applauded softly. Eve's hands loosened on her folio, but her face remained mask still. After class, Claire approached Eve. "I hope you know, my intention isn't to hurt anyone." Eve gave a brittle smile. "Intentions and impact rarely match, Professor." She turned away to Lena. "Can we talk?" They slipped outside to a courtyard rimmed with budding magnolias. Eve spoke first. "Your mural is beautiful, but it doesn't fix us." "I know," Lena said. "I need to figure out why I reached for her. Maybe I was chasing validation. Or running from stability. But I don't want to lose you." Eve's eyes shone. "Then prove it." After showcase we pause everything. No contact with Claire outside mandatory reviews. We focus on us. Counseling, honesty. All of it. "Yes," Lena breathed. Felt like climbing a cliff. Daunting yet necessary. Eve exhaled. "I'll stand by you Friday. But if lines blur again I walk. Forever." Lena nodded, heart hammering both terror and hope. That night Claire typed a message to Lena. "I need to discuss the inquiry," then deleted it. She stared at her wedding photo again. The crack between who she was and who she wanted to be widened each hour. She poured the bourbon but set it aside untouched. Mark entered, jacket slung over a chair. His gaze settled on her weary posture. "Claire, what's going on? You're distant." The dean called. Asked if I knew about some student rumor. His voice tightened. "Do I have something to worry about?" Claire opened her mouth, closed it. Truth pressed at her ribs like broken glass. "There's an accusation. It's not what they think, but I can't explain yet." Mark's jaw worked. Is this why you silenced my calls? Cancelled dinners? Hurt flickered in his eyes. Talk to me. She braced hands on the desk. I will. After showcase. I need to finish this project. Then I'll tell you everything. Her voice wavered. Please trust me. Mark stepped back, disappointment splintering his features. Trust needs light, Claire. Not shadows. He left without another word. Claire sank into the chair, head in hands. Outside, Beacon Hill streetlights flickered, and somewhere in the city a clock chimed midnight, the last breath before the day of reckoning. Friday dawned sharp and bright. Rain clouds swept clean. Cooperbridge's main gallery transformed into a cathedral of color and tension. Faculty mingled with donors. Students straightened tags on easels. Journalists from the globe hovered near the entrance, smelling scandal and art alike. Eve arrived first, wearing black slacks and a cream blazer spattered intentionally with paint, an armor of artistry. She positioned her realist diptych opposite Lena's mural, the invisible barrier between reaching figures glowing under spotlights. Lena entered next with Professor Malik, breathless, hair swept into a careless bun. She spotted Eve and offered a tentative smile. Eve nodded, truce in place. Then Claire, chic in charcoal silk, walked in accompanied by Dean Reynolds. Her eyes found Lena's like twin magnets. She forced herself to turn away, greeting guests with practiced grace. Yet tension coiled in every muscle. Mark stood near the back, arms crossed, face unreadable as he watched his wife circulate. The gallery filled, cameras flashing, voices cresting. Dean Reynolds stepped to the podium to open the showcase. As she lauded collaboration and integrity, Lena's pulse thundered. Eve's fingers brushed hers, a lifeline. But before the speech could finish, a voice from the entrance barked. Hold up! A young journalist pushed forward, brandishing her phone. Dean Reynolds, are you aware of allegations of an inappropriate relationship between Professor Whitmore and her student artist? Gasps erupted. Flashbulbs popped. Claire's face drained of color. Dean Reynolds raised a hand for calm, but murmurs surged like wildfire. Mark stepped forward, eyes locked on Claire, betrayal dawning. Eve's grip on Lena's hand tightened. Lena froze, breath torn from her lungs. Journalists swarmed. Students whispered. Paintings towered overhead like silent witnesses as every hidden thread yanked into the harsh gallery light. In that suspended heartbeat, the fate of careers, relationships, and reputations pivoted on the next words spoken. And beneath the roar, three hearts hammered in unison, terrified, defiant, demanding to be heard. The collision had arrived, but the aftermath, unpredictable, irreversible, was only beginning. Flash after flash seared the gallery air, the journalist's question ricocheting off polished walls like a gunshot none of them could dodge. Dean Reynolds lifted the microphone, but Claire's voice reached it first. Steady, stripped of pretense. She admitted only to poorly managed boundaries, refused salacious detail, and apologized to her students and colleagues. Mark's silence across the room was louder than any accusation. He pivoted, walking out before reporters could corner him, and the closing door sounded like a verdict. Lena's pulse pounded in her ears. Eve's fingers were still wrapped around hers, but the grip felt less like rescue now, more like a life raft caught in the same sudden riptide. Security ushered press outside while faculty swept donors into side halls with forced smiles. Dean Reynolds declared the showcase temporarily paused and requested all principals meet in the conference suite upstairs. The corridor's overheads flickered as the four of them, Claire, Lena, Eve, Malik, filed past whispering clusters of students. Claire's heels clicked a slow metronome. Lena could almost measure each beat against the rise and fall of her own panicked breath. Inside the suite, blinds closed against camera lenses, the dean spoke first, a tight reminder of ethics codes and reputational risk. Claire accepted full responsibility, asked that no disciplinary note tarnish Lena's record, insisted their work stand on artistic merit. Malik vouched for the mural's significance. So did Eve, voice low but resolute, arguing the piece now mattered precisely because it revealed the cost of being seen. Reynolds sighed, rubbing her temple. "The art stays," she ruled. "But Professor Whitmore, you're on administrative leave pending review. Tonight you'll excuse yourself from the reception." Hush followed. Claire bowed her head in acknowledgement. Lena felt the room tilt. Vindication laced with grief. Eve's hand left hers then, not in anger but release. And for the first time Lena sensed the shape of a world where she would have to balance without that familiar anchor. Downstairs, the showcase resumed in muted tones. The plaque beside Unveiled Identities gained a new line. Created in collaboration under investigation of faculty-student boundaries. Crowds gathered thicker than before. Curiosity sharpened by scandal. Eve's diptych drew hushed praise from curators. And when award ribbons were announced, she won the juror's prize for technical mastery. Applause thundered. She accepted with a nod, searching the crowd. Lena clapped until her palms stung, pride and heartbreak mingling like fresh pigment. Claire, already gone, left a single envelope with Malik addressed to both students. They opened it together in the hushed stairwell afterward. "No matter where this ends for me," it read in Claire's looping hand. "Your courage on canvas has reminded me what honesty can still look like. Do not let the institution shrink your voices." See. Below the signature lingered 3 tiny strokes of cobalt, like a private signature. That night Boston's streets glimmered with post-rain sheen. Lena returned to the apartment to find Eve packing 2 suitcases. No fury colored the scene, only exhaustion and the quiet tenderness of ending something important with care. "My sister's spare room in Providence," Eve said when Lena asked where. "Just for the summer. I need to know who I am when I'm not orbiting anyone." She touched Lena's cheek, smearing dried blue paint the way Claire accidentally had days earlier. "Figure out why you chased the spark," she whispered. "If we meet again, let's be whole." Lena helped her carry bags to the rideshare, watched taillights fade, then climbed the stairs alone. The silence inside felt vast as warehouse echo. She turned on a single lamp, fetched fresh canvas, and began sketching the empty living room exactly as it was. One toothbrush missing from the cup, Eve's mug ring on the coffee table, a city's hush pressing at the windows. The pencil lines steadied her breath. Creating was still the truest compass she had. A week later Claire resigned before the review concluded, citing the need for personal realignment. Rumor said she accepted a curatorial fellowship on the West Coast, far from Beacon Hill brownstones and marriage photographs boxed into storage. Mark filed separation papers quietly. Newspapers ran one more piece, then the art scene moved on. Controversy always cedes to the next headline. Spring turned to humid Boston summer. Lena poured herself into a series she titled Fault Lines, Turbulent Skies Cut by Threads of Light. She sent the first finished canvas to Eve without note. Weeks passed before a postcard arrived in reply. Eve's realist sketch of the same sky from Providence, rendered in calm pastels. No caption beyond, "Still looking up." Lena pinned it above her easel. By August, Cooperbridge's board invited Eve and Lena to mount a dual show in the fall, independent of faculty mentorship. They met on campus to discuss it, greeting each other with tentative smiles. Hurt hadn't vanished, but it no longer blistered. It had calcified into something both could stand on as artists. They laid portfolio pages across a picnic table, debating lighting angles until conversation shifted to memories of freshman year midnight diner runs. Laughter, astonishing in its ease, bloomed between them again. On the riverbank that evening, Lena unfolded Claire's envelope one last time, tracing the cobalt strokes that had catalyzed so much change. She dipped a brush in matching blue and on a small scrap of canvas, painted a single open bird, wings mid-beat, horizon tilted daringly off-center, and set it adrift downstream. Water carried it toward harbor lights, a quiet elegy and a silent thank you. The next morning dawned crystal clear. Lena arrived at the studio early, sunlight gold-leafing the half-finished works. She pressed play on the old radio, filled a mug, and stood before a blank canvas wider than anything she had dared before. She breathed once, twice, then drove the first vibrant streak across white expanse, a line forward irretrievable, alive with every fracture and every spark that had led her here. Outside, bells of a distant church chimed 9, muffled by walls thick with paint and possibility. Inside, the brush kept moving and the story, no longer triangle but open horizon, unfurled in brilliant, unstoppable color.